Discipleship is a big deal in the Bible. In the Gospels, Jesus has disciples, and importantly, he tells them to go make disciples as well. But what is a disciple, and how are they made? In the Bible, the word disciple is used several different ways. In Luke's Gospel, anyone who listens to one of Jesus' sermons is generally called a disciple. The word in the Greek language that the Bible was written in means a learner, so maybe Luke was onto something. The book of Acts seems to use the term for anyone who believes in Jesus. Some have said the word disciple implies discipline, so it refers to people who take on disciplines or rules. But then the Apostle Paul doesn't seem to use the word at all, aside from one reference to Timothy. The majority of the uses of the word, though, are found in the Gospels of Matthew, 72 times, and John, 78 times, both of them speaking of the disciples twice as much as Mark or Luke. Matthew stands out. It's Matthew's Gospel, for instance, that contains the command to go and make disciples of all nations. And Matthew uses the word more narrowly than the other writers. This makes sense if he intends to link it to a specific command, whereas the others use the word in a general sense while relaying the story of Jesus in reference to their own subjects. Matthew makes discipleship the end of his story. When Jesus gives the discipleship command, Matthew wraps up his book. So in order to honor Jesus and his command in Matthew's Gospel, I'd like to suggest there is a Matthew model of discipleship taken not simply by word-searching the whole Bible for the word disciple, but by walking alongside Jesus in Matthew's account to see what it was he was referring to when he gave us the well-known discipleship commission. The best way for you to do this, of course, is to just read through Matthew's Gospel for yourself and note what Jesus does in the training of his disciples. What I think you'll find, if you do, is that the discipleship of Jesus is a robust process that gives particular shape and character to the kind of learners and learning methods he calls us to be and to embrace when he says of disciple making, teaching them to observe everything I have commanded you. So, when we talk of the Matthew Discipleship Conference or the Matthew Model of Discipleship, what we mean is simply discipleship as it's taught in the Bible, and specifically Jesus' example in the Gospel of Matthew. Alright, what is that model? What is the discipleship that Jesus commanded? Here's where I want to be careful. The parts of a thing are less than the whole. If you take a part and treat it like it is the whole, then you turn the part into something else entirely. Take Jesus himself as an example. We believe that Jesus was fully human. That's part of who he is. But if you say, so that's all he is, I believe in Jesus because I believe he was only human, well, you've taken the part as the whole, and now you're talking about Jesus in a way that wouldn't even make you a Christian. Christians believe that Jesus was fully human and fully God. You need both parts to get the biblical Jesus. In Jesus' example of discipleship, we note about 12 aspects of discipleship, roughly broken down into 4 categories: casting a discipleship vision, cultivating a disciple's character, creating a discipleship culture, and comparing to a discipleship standard. While you don't have to get every little bit perfect, if you're totally missing a part, you don't really end up with biblical discipleship. Let me give a couple examples. Under casting a discipleship vision, we note that disciples come by sacrificial commitment. And under cultivating a disciple's character, we say that discipleship isn't just about actions, but thinking and values. If you keep the thinking and values bit, but take away the commitment, you just end up with a free class. You get the crowds who follow Jesus on and off, but not the disciples that Matthew called us to observe and to be. Likewise, if you were to be big on commitment but only focus on actions, you'd end up with a superficial version of discipleship that would look more like the Pharisees that Jesus rebuked throughout Matthew's Gospel. Again, for the discipleship culture category, we see that Jesus did his discipling work as a family. And in the comparing to a discipleship standard section, we see that Jesus calls his disciples to faithfulness over results. If you were to have a committed group of people focusing on thoughts and values without being that sort of family environment, you wind up with counseling or maybe group therapy, but in a really risky way because you're asking people to share intimately without giving them a healthy place to do it. If you're all about results instead of faithfulness, that kind of sharing could end up being used against them or you as a leader. Each of these parts fit together and outline the shape of Jesus' discipleship. Ultimately, when we hold all of them in unison, we get a biblical picture of Jesus and a discipleship that should shape us like him. So here are the main parts we see in Matthew of Jesus' discipleship. Go read through Matthew's Gospel for yourself to learn more about each. A reading guide is included in the description for this video.